I feel like this is just an echo chamber of us agreeing with each other. This is just what it's going to be.
Hey, look, I told you
I
it was
think you have a
synergy.
pretty good
So
point.
I'm not shocked by that, Lo. I'm really not.
I'm Lo Harris, and you're tuning into One-on-One with Lo, where I bring in folks from various creative communities to engage in uplifting conversations around how we can show up in our work as our authentic selves. Enjoy the conversation.
Hello.
What's happening?
So glad to see you. I am currently in Massachusetts, so that's why I'm doing this setup, rigging it up in a very different circumstance.
Oh, you're all good, for sure. No, thanks for having me today. I am excited to chat.
Yes, I'm so glad that it finally worked out. This is Dwight White, and he's an artist and a creative strategist. He's based in Chicago and in Los Angeles at the same time, which is really cool. And he has a really big passion for creating a greater perspective for the role that Black art plays in, adding creativity to the world. And you've really lived your life boldly, and you inspire so many community building initiatives. And sometimes I even wonder if that spirit of teamwork comes from your time like on the Northwestern football team, because you really have a way of rallying people together and creating these really great initiatives that we're going to get into and talk through. And for those of you who are also tuning in, we actually both went to Northwestern together. Dwight is such a talented
That's what we do. Go Cats, you know what I'm saying?
Period. So I mean, it's so lovely to kind of reconnect with you in this very different circumstance, because you never know what people are doing, what people are passionate about, and where they're taking their passions. And it's so cool to see all of the things that you're doing. And I sincerely want to thank you for joining me today on One-on-One.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the warm introduction. Obviously we've got a lot of synergy between the two of us, so I'm excited to jump into the conversation, especially because of that.
Absolutely. So just to kind of set the stage, I want to allow you to introduce yourself on your own terms. So I wanted to ask if you could start by sharing a bit about yourself, sharing a bit about your work, and how you got started as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dwight White, originally from Houston, Texas. I've been in the Chicagoland area for nearly 10 years. After Northwestern, tapped into different neighborhoods, different communities from there. And now, as Lo mentioned, kind of split my time between both Chicago and LA. Both places that, truly helped me elevate my career and really start my life as in my adulthood, right? So overall, that's kind of where I'm at from a place perspective. Beyond that, what I do, I'm an artist first and foremost. I'm also a curator, and then I utilize my background in marketing, teamwork, like Lo said, bringing people together to stretch that curating muscle, but also, build teams as a creative strategist. So that's kind of me holistically. Something I'm extremely passionate about is just reaching people in the communities, reaching them where they are. So I create artists on small scales, large scales, like murals, utilize different mediums to reach different people. That's what I'm all about, just building community specifically for my people. And so that's a little bit about me.
Period.
Yeah.
He said it.
I was like, let me not even run on. I feel like that's it.
You kept it real simple.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's a very clear mission that it seems like you have. And I really wanted to actually bring up a quote. In your pre-interview, Dwight, you actually mentioned that it's always been your calling to pursue a career in art, and you felt that you were reborn again with a new spirit for creativity. Can you talk a bit more about that sense of rejuvenation and creative energy, where it came from, what sparked it, and how do you keep it going?
Yeah, reborn is an idea or a concept that, based on my past and who I've become, who I am today, what I stand for, how I engage with people, community, culture. I do it very differently than I once did in my life, right? Early on, I think I did that through camaraderie, teamwork, and things like that. As I evolved as an artist, started doing that strategically by creating things that connect people. Started thinking about shared experiences, specifically for Black people. And I think that's kind of where it all starts. Being reborn is just finding a new purpose in life. My purpose starts and stems in creativity, and then connecting people and community. And so I don't know, when I found my purpose in life, I was very intentional about how I approached it. I try and be consistent, continue to let my community know I'm there for them, both the creative community, but also the Black community in Chicago and beyond. And that's what Reborn was all about for me. It was me understanding my role as a creator and how I can have an impact on this world through the thing that I do on a daily basis.
And I see that marketing brain coming out because I also studied integrated marketing communications as well. For me, that sense of purpose driven and also consistency has been more important than anything else, like right now, in like really kind of sharing my work. You know, I took the time to build out the brand pillars of like what it means to be Lo Harris, and I'm sure that you've done that for Dwight White. And
got a whole brand guidelines now, Lo.
Exactly,
Yeah.
I do too. We're gonna have to exchange. I've been making like a brand guideline where it's like, okay, like these are my 4 pillars. What does this mean? How does my content tie into that? Absolutely, and I think that that's a very integrated and holistic way of approaching your creativity, because I think so many artists get overwhelmed. Like, you know, we all just want to create and we all want to give something beautiful to the world, and I think that it's very common for artists to get so overwhelmed by they just want to create that they almost want to shun kind of the creative strategy that can go behind their work and work to amplify their work. And so the first thing that I really want to get into is the concept of finding your style and building a business around it. So you describe your style as spontaneous realism, bold and insightful, and I couldn't agree more. And you've managed to, you know, translate that work into various mediums, which, as you say, can reach different people. You put your work on paper, canvases, buildings, even shoes, which is really fantastic. So I kind of want to ask first, like, what would you say has been your favorite canvas to kind of put your work on?
Yeah, so Lo, I feel like it's two part, right? So my favorite medium is actually one that people don't really see much of, right? Like my favorite medium is pen to paper. I think when it comes to writing, when it comes to sketching, everything that when I talk about spontaneous realism, that all stems from me just getting down initial thoughts on paper and letting it expand from there. And so a lot of times the final product that's consumer facing or people see in a gallery or on the street in street art, that often is an expansion of the initial idea that happened to be my favorite, which is pen to paper. That's that. And then the second piece of that, I think my favorite over the years had become murals, because I was reaching people where they were, right? Like you can create a mural out in the street, and for someone who doesn't understand the gallery space, or for neighborhoods who don't necessarily have a gallery in their home neighborhood, I'm able to put the art where they are. Those things are able to start conversations. People can talk about it. People can be inspired regardless of what level they are in art education, right? So I think those are probably have been my 2 favorite mediums. And then I think about, you know, art on canvas, right? Like that's a pretty common medium that's allowed me to enter gallery spaces, allowed me to travel to different states, think about my work more globally, right? So yeah, I think all the different mediums, they fascinate me because some of them are really personal and some of them are to be shared and interpreted by others. So
Period.
yeah.
I love that. And you know, one thing that I think you also do very well is documenting your work beyond the literal art that you're making. You share so much BTS through photography and through video. And I'm curious to know, you know, how do you think showing up in this particular way has impacted your business, and how do aspects of that almost like influencer like presence kind of engage with your greater creative strategy?
I think for me it starts with collaboration. You know, like when I meet people like yourself, who I can tell have a brilliant mind in terms of creativity and taking their practice seriously, I always love just like testing the waters. Like, okay, what does collaboration look like for me and other creators even? And so I think because of that, I've been able to work consistently with, you know, my guy Jalen, who's a photographer, videographer, who you met last year, right? And it's a former teammate of mine, which is crazy. And then there's, you know, I met my guy Jay. He's an installation artist. And there's other painters in the Chicago neighborhoods where I'm just like, okay, we all are doing our own thing independently. Now, what does collaboration look like? And when I started digging into that, that's when I recognized, like, okay, if I'm collaborating with a photographer, videographer, like, what's my added value to him and what's his added value to me? And when we come together and understand that, it's, I don't know, it's just a seamless relationship. So then you start seeing me put out behind the scenes content because I'm working with people I trust to be behind the scenes with me. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It is true. I mean, and in that, and in you talking about that, and even in as I'm scaling my own business, I'm finding that, you know, building a successful team really relies on a relinquishment of ego in a way. Like when I am working with a photographer or a studio assistant or an administrative assistant, my intentions with them are not that I am this big sun and they are the planets orbiting around me and capturing my likeness. And because, like, what incentive do they have to be invested in me, right? You know, they have their own creative passions. They have their own approach to things. And so for me, when I work with people and when I collaborate with people, it is imperative that I have something that I can reasonably give them that actually would enrich their lives and you know, give them something to be excited about too when we're working together. There's this aspect, I don't know if you ever took the PR class while you were in IMC, but there was this PR class taught by a Black professor, and he taught us about this concept of deference to expertise in PR communications, defer to the experts. And so for me, that's something that I take super seriously because I recognize that I don't know everything, but I know enough. I know enough to know that I should listen to the person who does know more than me and something that I need help with.
Right.
And so for me, I'm always trying to keep an open working field and relationship, an open studio where, you know, if I don't care if you're an intern, you know, if an intern has an insight into something, like, I don't care what your rank is, you know, in the organization, like, you have valuable insight and valuable knowledge, and that should be respected and appreciated.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that, and I think that's definitely an aspect of the secret sauce, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, like, Lo, it's hard sometimes, right? Like, because like, as a creator, you're really confident in what you do, right? And you're very knowledgeable about what's going on in your head and how you execute it and share it with the world. So, like, collaboration is something it's like learned, right? Like, you have to learn how to collaborate. And then when you do open up the door to listen to others at all levels of the industry, right? Like, it's incredible. Like, some of the best creative ideas, like, come from the grassroots level of what we would define as success as an artist, right? So I think that's, like, a great point, is just, you know, acknowledging that there are the right ideas across the wide range and wide spectrum of creators.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing that I want to get into is, you know, one really cool aspect of your practice is that you maintain this fabulous balance of artist and entrepreneur. And I've always kind of known you to be pretty enterprising in terms of how you go about creating opportunities and partnerships for yourself. So before I ask this, actually, are you represented at all? Or before I ask this next question, I wasn't sure.
No. Me, and the squad, the team, we've moved very independently. So, like, we have a collective, but no, I'm not formally represented by any body or any entity or agency.
I love to hear that.
Yeah,
so my next question is,
they say self-made, but, you know, like, I'm made with the team, with the tribe.
Yeah.
But no, we hold our own. So.
Yes, and that's honestly, stay that way, stay beautiful, because I have signed a terrible deal in the past, and it just has turned me off from representation. Do you have any tips for artists who are looking to start pitching partnerships with brands, but they aren't too sure how to go about it without having an agency as a middleman? You know, I also have my own thoughts about agency, which I can add that after you answer this question, but.
Yeah, no, my thoughts and what I say to most creators who ask that question is remain authentic to yourself, right? Like, if you go seeking what the brand does, what is your value, right? So I think it starts with you staying consistent, being consistent doing your practice regularly and building brand awareness, right? So like the brand then recognizes what your added value is. So then the other part of that is recognizing that you're a business. Like, we are creators, but being a creator, that means you're an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur means you operate and run a business to eat. And because of that, it requires discipline. It requires you coming correct. It requires some organization, right? To really package yourself as a business so that they recognize that they're almost working, regardless of if it's just you or you got a team with 2, 3, whatever it looks like. You basically become an agency, right? And you have control, creative control over who you partner with and why you would partner with them. And that's how you start to find the right brand partners. But I think it's all around recognizing yourself as a business because you're a creator. Because you're a creator, you are truly an entrepreneur.
Period, point blank. And I love that, because I think that a lot of times I get a lot of messages from like budding illustrators or folks who are trying to like get into children's books, and they ask me questions like, okay, like, well, how do I start? You just message brands, you just email brands. And my situation was a little bit wonky because my kind of business kind of partnerships kind of came out of this virality of my work, and I never really got to experience like from the ground up, like, okay, like how do I approach a brand to pitch to them?
Yeah.
Do you have any insight on what that could look like for those viewers who are wondering like, okay, like I don't know if I'm going viral tomorrow, so what can I reasonably do to start putting my work out there and talking to these brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think you think about like what your mission is, right? Like I think we talked about, earlier on this call, like we're working through brand guidelines, and like what that means is that you have a very clear understanding of what your pillars are, like why you create, who you create for, and what you want your work to look like and stand for. And I think when you have a clear understanding of that, that's what you're pitching to brands. It's like, because like you're pitching alignment. Like, this is what I do, this is what you do, this is what we can do together. And I think,
so would you suggest then that they go like on LinkedIn and message people? Like, how would you advise they approach?
So I would advise the approach by, and this is my approach personally, is utilizing real life experiences, real world connection, right? Like a cold email, personally for me has never worked or like led me into a authentic brand partnership, right? But something that has is just literally genuinely talking, and then we eventually find common ground. There's alignment, there's an understanding of like, wow, what you do is dope, wow, what you do is dope. And then you get an opportunity to put something like a deck together, or put something like a storytelling piece together of like, this is like what I want to achieve. I think with your collaboration, with your help and my knowledge of culture, art, and creativity, together, we can probably do something really dope and more impactful than your macro level brand can do solo. That's what I think it's all about. Artists like and creators are truly at the grassroots of culture. Like, we drive the culture, right? So because of that, it's necessary for brands that are macro, that are way up here and are just getting product off or whatever it may be, to connect with creators that are on the ground, because that's where the consumers are. You feel me?
Period. And also come correct and come with a story and come specific, because if you get in there and you're like, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? Like that dilly-dallying isn't necessarily gonna get you from point A to point B.
Right. Well, I mean, it's all around like what added value is. Like I said that earlier as well. But like, if you're only seeking a brand because you think it's going to elevate or like skyrocket your career because you partnered with a brand, that is incorrect. You're partnering with a brand to elevate your idea or your mission. You're not partnering with the brand to get additional following or to appear to be something or stand for something that you don't.
In the story of your career, they're your +1, not the other way around.
Correct. So you remain consistent regardless, and then you find the right partners, and then when you find them, you pitch the heck out of yourself, and out of what you want to do to them, and then you find some common ground.
Building community, because you know all about this is all leading, you know where this is all leading up to, and we're going to get to it, but building community. You've mentioned previously that you're incredibly passionate about people, community, and how creativity can be used to bring people together, start conversations, and do fellowship. So where did this passion for people and community really begin?
I think that passion came from, I came from Houston, Texas, flew into Evanston, Illinois, right? That is not necessarily Chicago. Chicago's a really big city. Evanston is a suburb of Chicago, right? So my passion for people, community, connecting, it did start in Evanston, right? Like I was, after my football career, after I got injured, I started recognizing the other opportunities and the other organizations that were on campus that either had different perspectives than me or maybe shared some perspective and we just didn't know, right? And then beyond that, I started stepping into the city of Chicago, and that is a world of culture in itself, right? Like I hopped around to a few different neighborhoods. I got to understand where my people are at, how I connect with them, going to art experiences. Again, art drives culture. And so for me, it was really all about getting to connect with like-minded people, getting an understanding of what it means to be a creator in Chicago, what it means to be a Chicagoan. Like I can never say that I was born and raised here, right? But I do understand the people, their grit, their hustle, the tenacity that it takes to live and operate and elevate in a city like this. And so I think that's what grew my passion, is meeting people and being like, wow, like, we can come up together. Like you have knowledge that I don't have. I have knowledge you don't have. Again, togetherness, collaboration. And that's what drives my passion for community, I think.
Weirdly, I think that, and maybe this is the New York art scene, but sometimes collaboration can be really difficult. We're interesting because we're all these very individual, big personalities with very individual styles, and it can be super easy for us to operate on an island and not coordinate information or want to hoard information or hoard resources because we feel like, well, if I don't, if I share my leads, then this competitor, which I don't believe in competitors in art, I believe in contemporaries, this competitor is going to steal my client or whatever, or become, especially in the Black art scene. Like, right. Let's be real, like Black art is so often reduced to the idea that, like, you could have a Black artist who's a cubist and a Black artist who's hyperrealism and a Black artist who's abstract or something, and they would never be associated with those various art movements that are based on the aesthetic that white artists are able to live within based on the value of their work. Black artists are always going to be like, your genre is Black art. Yeah. And because of that, especially in creator communities and online communities, it creates a sense of competition, like where, okay, who's going to get the Juneteenth campaign? Who's going to get the Black History Month campaign? Right. And that's very unhealthy. So how do you think artists can do, especially Black artists, how do you think we can do a better job of cultivating community? And what benefits do you imagine we'd see from doing that?
Yeah, I think the way we do a better job is going back to your point on competition. We're not competitors. You just pointed out 3 different, very distinct styles of artwork that, how could someone who's painting realism, oil paintings, truly be a competitor, someone doing cubism art? Even in the same style of work, we're in a career where the opportunities are plentiful. You as a creator, you as a human being, because you are different than the person next to you, and going back to my earlier point on you're the brand. Like, there's no way your brand is identical to someone else's. So you all have an added benefit. You all have added value in different ways. So that's what you have to understand. I think once we understand that, collaboration becomes a little bit easier. You have more of a peace of mind about collaborating with others, because there's nothing about the person next to you that should take away from who you are and what you want to create. They're not in your mind. So I think sharing ideas, sharing concepts, sharing sharing in general is an added benefit to all of us. Don't get me wrong. I have shared things with other creators and maybe been taken advantage of, right? That's happened, and that's been a pain point in my career, right? To recognize a lack of authenticity, a lack of people you can trust, right? But I think at the end of the day, even that didn't take away from what I'm capable of as a creator. So I don't know. I think building community, it all comes down to being humble, and the word you used earlier was the ego. It starts with ego. Like, ego has to go, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain part of your ego that allows you to remain very very consistent in your practice, right? Like, there's a lot of naysayers, people that are going to tell you that you probably can't do this or you probably can't do that, but that seems like too big of an idea. Your ego protects that, right? Your ego protects your ability to go do things that are the unthinkable. However, your ego can also be detrimental to building community. So yeah.
Absolutely. Ego, like when you relinquish that ego, when you open yourself up to actual collaboration, to lifting as you climb, to putting a spotlight on others, to taking critique, you learn so much more about yourself and your own practice, and you can learn so much from that. And I think that there are so many wonderful artists who could potentially be missing out on a whole new experience of their brand identity because they're so protective of that ego, and they want to be the one, and they want to be, separated from, or they maybe don't trust other creatives and all of that. So I absolutely echo. I feel like this is just an echo chamber of us agreeing with each other. This is just what it's going to be.
Hey, look, I told you, it was synergy. So I'm not shocked by that, Lo. I'm really not.
I think so. Okay, so the next thing I want to ask is, I asked you what your power statement was in the pre-interview, and you said the following: "Don't see it, create it." Like, with a question mark. Everybody, like, got milk? Like, you did it. So, how do you approach this philosophy in your daily life?
In my daily life, that idea is something that, going back to my favorite medium, right? Thoughts on paper, pen to paper. That's how I practice it daily, right? Like, if there's something that I'm thinking that feels like a rich, new, and different idea, and it has some sort of uniqueness to it, I like to document it. Now, how I bring that to life, that depends, right? Like, for example, like the Juneteenth idea that I've like brought to life more recently. That was started with an idea of like what inspired me in Houston, Texas. That started with an idea of like what it looked like to celebrate Juneteenth holiday in a place where there's high awareness. Everyone knows what Juneteenth is and why it's celebrated. To then coming to a place where there was low awareness, and only more recently people understood for what it was. So, problem I wanted to solve, or a gap I wanted to fill, was how can Juneteenth be celebrated in a place that hasn't historically celebrated it? It's all about solving problems. I think any business, regardless of the industry, like, you find success by filling gaps, finding white space, and creating within that space. And so that's, I think, how I practice it daily. It might not come to life every day, but it's always brewing.
So let's talk about a time when it came to life. And this is why I put this question here, because I'm a producer mind. Let's segue into talking about something I can feel, the Juneteenth experience. So typically at the end of the show, I ask my guests if they have any upcoming events to promote. But in your case, the upcoming event is actually a huge talking point for this interview today, because it's a perfect illustration of what you were just saying. It's a perfect illustration of your principles around art, your principles around community, and your principles of don't see it, make it. So can you tell our audience about the Something I Can Feel experience, what it is? You mentioned that it came about because you came, from a space that had huge awareness of Juneteenth for years, celebrations of Juneteenth for years, into a community where Juneteenth hadn't even been considered before, and now it's this whole federal holiday. So talk a bit about the inception of Something I Can Feel, how you chose the name, what your goals are in terms of that particular exhibition and what your role is in creating it.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of starting with something I can feel as an overall concept. It was rooted in the idea of celebrating Blackness. Specifically, I made it specifically for Juneteenth, as that's where I wanted it to come to life annually because of what Juneteenth meant to me as a Southerner or a native Houstonian. But really, it was all around this idea of taking a step back, breathing, focusing on a moment of escapism and celebrating Blackness. And I think what I saw in the city of Chicago is we were utilizing Juneteenth as a day to spread awareness about our struggle. And our struggle needs to be talked about because our struggle is what has often held our communities back. But on a day like Juneteenth, I want to talk about what has elevated and propelled our communities. And so something I can feel is all around this idea is like, feel, get in touch with yourself, tap into our mental health, our well-being, and our culture, and acknowledge these creators that are on the ground level pushing the culture forward. And so that's what something I can feel is all about. And for me, I took it on as an opportunity to be that Southerner, to be that Houstonian who has lived in Chicago for 10 years, to bridge the gap. And, as the curator of this experience, it's been incredible. It's the first time I've been able to work with a number of creative disciplines across the Chicagoland area and beyond. We've got everything from artists that are painters, musicians, fashion designers, and just that alone, it just shows the breadth of creativity that's in Chicago as Black people. So that's kind of generally what the concept was all about.
You mentioned before the show that as you've grown as an artist, you developed a greater perspective on the impact of Black creativity in the world. So not just, in the Chicago community or in the Houston community, but like just in the world. And I'd really love to, if you could reflect on, how something I can feel went last year. How does this perspective influence, your thoughts around how it went last year, and what are you hoping for this year?
Yeah, now how it went last year, it was a beautiful moment. It was dynamic, I would say, right? Like I recognized after putting all those thoughts on paper, like what does my community need or what does it feel like it needs? And to be able to put programming in place, whether it's literally having a pop-up art gallery, yoga experiences, opportunity for community to take artistic tools and create with us, right? All these different things, it was just dynamic and it was beautiful. And so my biggest takeaway from last year, it was that needs to live for longer than a pop-up moment, for longer than this one experience. It needs legs. And so, going into this year, I leaned into some of those same experiences that worked last year, but also thought about ways that I can push it even further by collaborating with some of the same creators from last year as yourself. And then obviously tapping into what's new, thinking about how music has an impact on how people feel, how sound, smell, and really thinking about our senses and what that looks like for Black people. Even included a taste experience this year because soul food is a huge part of my experience growing up as well. So it's just more holistic. It's just growing, right? And growth is great.
There were so many talented artists there last year, and there's so many talented artists who were in the show this year. And as you mentioned, I'm also in the show, and your focus on joy and celebration and Black futures. That's what so much of my work represents. But then also Chicago is a very special place for me because that's where my dad came from. We would road trip up to my grandma's, on the South Side, and that was a very happy place for me. And beyond going to Northwestern in the suburbs above Chicago, Chicago is an important place for me, and it's a second home to me, regardless of if I physically live there right now. And I'd love if you could talk a bit about some of the artists who are included in the entire production, some from last year who are reappearing this year, some new ones who are coming in, how you discovered them.
Yeah, no, I mean, the artist is, as a creator and as an artist, I spend a decent amount of time looking at my peers, learning from my peers, being inspired by my peers, especially Black creators, seeing their evolution over the years even. And so a lot of the creators in the show, they're at, different levels in their career even, right? Like some are, at the level where I've seen them go from, working 3 jobs to elevate or to keep their creative career going to now they're full-time, and really pushing the culture forward by being full-time artists, right? To some creators who are like on that borderline, they're like, hey, like, I'm really dope, Lane. I want to validate that. Like, yes, you are. And so I think there's creators in this show that are all have a really unique practice, who all represent something special, who are all celebrating Black creativity through their works. And so, there's Natch from Cincinnati. We have Sam Thousand, who is a Chicago local musician. Yana Cello as well. Tayo Jr. is a friend of mine who's a wonderful and incredible photographer, right? There's so many collaborators, so many painters, eWorks even, who I've met through mutual friends that at some point I've had an experience with their work, either from being a fan, viewing the work leisurely, or to the point where what they're doing, just even as cultural community members, inspires me. And then they happen to also be artists. So it's just dynamic, like I said, and it's diverse, and it's going to be really impactful for anyone in the room.
Okay, so manifestation moment. What do you hope Something I Can Feel will look like in 10 years? Like, what can this experience look like in 10 years?
10 years.
Like, as big and as bold and as wacky as you want to be.
Yeah, I think in 10 years, I think the elements and the components of it continue to grow, right? Like right now, Something I Can Feel is happening around a certain moment, around the celebration of Juneteenth. To me, the celebration of Blackness should be celebrated every single day. So I think Juneteenth right now is, although it's becoming a national holiday, it's growing. Something I Can Feel, I want to grow in a different way. I want it to basically maybe be able to detach itself from a Juneteenth holiday, and we still do programming there, but it's on a really large scale, where there's these experiences happening throughout the year or happening on a larger scale, where you're able to tap into experiences like Art Basel, right? There's experiences that are on a huge scale that we're looking to step into, right? And trying to figure out ways to navigate it, put ourselves in positions to be at these world-renowned art experiences. Something I Can Feel can be that. It can be that for Black creators. And so that's my goal, especially looking 10 years out, is how I'm bringing up the next generation of creators and them having a home as a Black creator, not feeling like they're outsiders to the arts community. So.
Absolutely. And we need more of that. We need more ins in the art community. And I think that Something I Can Feel is a fantastic beginning to having more experiences like that are grounded and people powered. What do you want your work to look like and stand for?
For me, what it looks like is I want it to look like the voice of the unheard. I want it to communicate something that maybe starts conversations. So whatever that looks like, I think that can look different at different points in time. And if you look at my work, it's evolved over time. But I want it to start conversations. That's what it stands for. Is it's a tool, it's a medium to bring people together and share dialogue. I think that's what I want my work to look like and stand for.
What has been one of your favorite projects to work on, besides Something I Can Feel?
One of my favorite projects to work on, besides Something I Can Feel, was it was a collaboration that pushed me beyond my comfort zone. Chicago Bulls this past year. It was I was working on like custom shoe design, right? Like that was a really interesting project for me, because I just gave myself permission to try mediums and materials that I traditionally don't use. So I think that was one of my favorites that came to the top of mind, just because it pushed me out of my comfort zone. And usually when I do that, I discover something new about myself.
So on the topic of having a personal brand, what work have y'all done in fleshing out Sorry. What work have y'all done in fleshing out your artistic visions, and how has it evolved?
Mm. I think the work I've done there is, giving myself permission to explore different mediums, explore different tools, and continue to push boundaries. I think not only in my practice as a fine artist, but push boundaries in terms of like, where can I get to in my mind? Where can my mind go and my imagination explore? And then how it's evolved is that I think the evolution is my style, right? Like my mind, as my mind evolves, my practice evolves. And as my practice evolves, my business evolves. And so I think that continues to grow, right? Like as entrepreneurs, we learn things about ourselves every single day because we face challenges every day. And because of that, I think that's where the evolution really is.
And I want to jump in on that too, because this is the thing that we're going to be talking about all night. But I like the idea of like fleshing out my artistic vision, like I love scaling. I love scaling. So, for me, like one really big thing I decided to do was to hire an administrative assistant, and that has completely transformed and taken a lot of burden off of me as a creator, because it kind of took this giant block out of my mind. And I know that sometimes, obviously, like it's a privilege to be able to engage and to have help and to ask for help. But I think that there is something to be said that sometimes, even when you can ask for help, you hold yourself back because you come up with a million reasons for why you don't want or need help. And you're not going to realize the value of that help, like no matter how much money you're making, until you get the help and you're like, whoa, this opens up my world completely. And I'm able to do the work that I have always wanted to do better.
Right.
I'm able to do it better. Like I have tried launching little series and little design, things like that. But I had so many between pleasing clients and satisfying my own vision for myself. I was in a weird way kind of forced to satisfy clients because I didn't have the bandwidth to do this for clients and then work on my website, do this for clients and come up with my own pitch deck, do this for clients and do these templated things that I've made for myself. And I think that when you're a creative person, scaling your business, getting help, getting assistance, the value of that can't be understated.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I don't even know how to say that any better myself, honestly. I think it's...
Well, I think it's time to wrap it up, but I do want to have a moment to spotlight. Well, first of all, if you don't follow Dwight, please follow him right now. Follow him right now, but also, please, Dwight, tell everybody how they can support or participate in Something I Can Feel, whether they're in the Chicago area or not.
First of all, thank you for the shout out and for people to follow the journey. But to support Something I Can Feel in the Chicagoland area is really all about you coming out, showing out where you can, like any events or any experiences or anything, any education that you're looking for. I think you can find that through Something I Can Feel. So we have programming over the next couple of weeks. You go to sicfexperiences.com. You can find it there, our long list of programming, and tap in. Come see Lowe's work, come see my new collection as well, and come celebrate these Black creators.
Go to that website, check it out. Check out some of the artwork if you're in Chicago in person. Take some pictures for me. I'm so sad I won't be there. I'm so happy to have you here with me, Dwight. Thank you so much for coming on One-on-One with Lo. Don't be a stranger. You're always welcome back. Dwight, also, can you share how can we support your work? Like you as an individual artist, personally.
Oh, I mean, me as an individual artist, really, to me, my work individually is rooted in the community. I mean, get out, view it, talk about it, share it. And obviously, if you do want to support financially, you can, buy prints of my work or come out and see my original collections. But www.dwightart.com, that's where you can find some limited edition prints. But just encourage you to continue to share and talk about the work in itself. And I think that's more than enough support for me.
Please check out Dwight's work, follow along, follow Something I Can Feel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Dwight, for coming on. And until next time, take care, y'all.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for watching. Follow along for more inspirational content.